We're now getting more details about the tragic condominium building collapse in Miami. This was a 13-story building and its south tower collapsed last week. So far, 151 people are unaccounted for. And as we speak at this very moment, the death toll is at 10 people. The number is likely to increase as the recovery effort continues. But for the sake of this discussion, I felt that it was important to talk about something that I keep hearing people say about how this never happens in America, and how it's actually important to focus on some of the flaws in our regulations and our building codes. And by the way, why it's so important to have strong building codes to begin with. So this is the Chaplain Tower. It was undergoing an inspection back in 2018 because every 40 years, buildings in this area need to be recertified. So in order to be recertified, you have inspectors come in and take a look at the structural integrity of the building. And so here's what we know based on this inspection that took place in 2018. A consultant found alarming evidence of, quote, major structural damage, end quote, to the concrete slab below the pool deck and abundant cracking and crumbling of the columns, beams, and walls of the parking garage under the building. So the 2018 report from the consultant, an engineer hired by the Condo Owners Association to examine the building, helped set in motion plans for a $12 million repair project that had been set to start soon, more than 2.5 years after the building managers were warned about the structural damage. But it was pretty clear that the structural damage was so bad and the repairs needed to start immediately. They clearly didn't start immediately. And Greg Schlesinger, a contractor and lawyer in Florida, said that the cracks and a kind of crumbling in the concrete known as spalling, also identified in the 2018 report, should have been a red flag if it seemed serious at the time. Now, there are other theories that I'll get to in just a second, but why are they recertifying the buildings every 40 years? And when you consider what was going down in Miami in the 1980s when this building was built, when you had, drug money laundered through real estate development, pretty sure you should be concerned about some shoddy work, right? So anyway, just some things I wanted to kind of discuss.
Yeah, so I lived in Miami, and when I first moved there, I lived literally 2 blocks from that apartment building. I lived at what used to be a crack hotel. If you haven't heard that story, I'll tell the members in the bonus episode today. It's kind of a fun/disastrous story. tyt.com/join to become a member or hit the join button below on YouTube. Now, on the important stuff here, when I was there, I had an overwhelming sense that things were not done by the book in Miami. Okay, in fact, there was a guy who ran, I remember we held a debate for the people running for mayor of Miami because I worked in news back then. Ben Mankiewicz and I did. And one of the guys was Marty, not for sale Shapiro. In Miami, they have to clarify. He literally changed his name to that. That was his, not for sale was his middle name because it was assumed that all the politicians were for sale.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it, by the way, it still should be.
Yes, unfortunately that's true.
Yeah.
And Miami is an amazing place. I've told another story in the bonus episode about how a guy had clogged up the whole highway once. But then when I went back, just a couple of years back, there was a sign on the highway saying, please do not stop in the middle of the highway. You don't need that sign unless people keep stopping in the middle of the highway. So it's a strange land, Miami. I love it, but it's got significant issues. So if you said to me, where is a building going to collapse? And name a major American city, I would have said Miami, okay? And so one is deregulation leads to situations like this. Now we don't know if that's the case in this situation. We'll have to get a lot more evidence in, right? But deregulation causes problems one after another. Look at Texas, they deregulate the energy and instantly everything is crumbling, right? There's regulations, it's just another word for laws. What are laws for? They're meant to protect you so that a building doesn't collapse. I remember my dad, back when we were Republicans, because he was a small business owner in New Jersey. Even then though, he was like, look, they're doing 6 inspections of the elevator. It's too much. I said, oh, okay, so you want no inspections of the elevator? He said, no. In Turkey, they do no inspections of the elevators, and you know what happens? elevators fall, right? I want 2 inspections a year because I want to make sure nobody falls. I go in the elevator, you go in the elevator, we all go in the elevator, right? There's a reason why they have the regulations. Now there's a second potential problem here, which is Miami's sinking, and we've also told you this on the show many times. The water level keeps rising. I visit Miami more often because I know it's not gonna last very long. And so that's very depressing for a city that I love, but so we don't know that it's the sinkhole. But if it's not the sinkhole in this one, it could be in another one. You know why? The water is constantly, every year it's rising. So that I don't know the science well enough to know if that's part of why you might have sinkholes. But if you do, and if you've never seen Miami Beach, it's a tiny sliver of land, nearly engulfed with by water, right? So and now it has started to flood without raining.
Yep.
Okay, so those are the issues at hand. So I'm really worried that this is not the last disaster we're gonna see in Miami.
So I want to show the surveillance video that's been making its rounds online because it has provided some clues to engineers and architects in regard to where the building might have had its vulnerability. And they're guessing that at the moment, obviously we don't know for sure yet, there needs to be a ton of investigation into this. But they're right now suspecting that there was a structural issue where the parking garage was, like at the bottom, right? So let's take a look at the surveillance video that I'm talking about, and you can kind of see how the building collapsed. It appears that the collapse began at the bottom. And so let me also just kind of describe what some of the reporters covering this had talked about. So the New York Times, for instance, says, while no definitive conclusions could be drawn from the surveillance video, which was shot from a distance and reveals only one perspective of the disaster, some of the engineers reviewing it last week said it seemed to suggest that the failure began at a specific point near the bottom of the structure, perhaps as far down as the parking garage beneath the building or on the first few floors. And if that is in fact the case, I mean, it is consistent with what the 2018 inspection indicated, right? Because they're talking about the cracks in the slab, the concrete slab. They're talking about the columns that literally hold up the entire building and how that seemed to be compromised. And then there's this whole thing about progressive collapse, as the New York Times reports, called progressive collapse. The gradual spread of failures could have occurred for a variety of reasons, including design flaws or the less robust construction allowed under the building codes of 4 decades ago when the complex was built. And that's the other thing, right? When we talk about laxed regulations, these buildings don't need to be inspected until like 40 years is up. So every 40 years they do the inspection, so they recertify the buildings. I would argue maybe do that a little sooner. Maybe 40 years is a little too long, especially if building codes have improved significantly since then. And then the one other thing I wanted to bring up, I'm seeing a lot of progressives online talk about, oh, it's the owner's fault, it's the owner's fault. You guys, this is a condominium building, meaning that each unit has an owner, right? And usually what happens in these situations, I would know unfortunately because I've experienced it, is there's a homeowners association or an HOA. And this is a group oftentimes of voluntary individuals who manage the building, right? They literally volunteer their time to do it. And oftentimes they're kind of in the dark about things. HOAs are actually pretty incompetent and pretty awful. So I say that because it's different from a private owner who has like malicious intent or selfish reasons. Let's say to cut costs, they don't spend money on the repairs. It doesn't appear that that's the case here, right?
Yeah, no, it's important to get the facts right. And I thought progressive collapse meant what they did with the $15 minimum wage. But
you can call it that too.
Yes, yeah. But in this case, it's referring to, of course, the building collapse. Guys, watching the video, that is super scary.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is a very, very serious issue. 9 dead so far confirmed, 150 missing.
It's just devastating.
Yeah, absolutely devastating. And so we need to make sure our buildings and bridges don't collapse. And they're collapsing all across the country. And so appropriately, we're discussing an infrastructure bill right now. And the one thing that's looked like it might pass is one that corporations are in favor of, and they would put tolls on you for the rest of your lives, et cetera, and perhaps not even improve the roads and bridges that much. We need to pass an actual infrastructure bill so that we don't have our loved ones getting killed in disasters like this. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.